Welcome back to Vinyl Friday, where I go through my records like a big nerd and talk about why I love them. Today's episode is another in our great White Album Peregrination, which, for the uninitiated, is a track-by-track deep dive through the White Album, during which one song is covered every month. And for those of you who are doing the math, yes, that means I'm going to be at this for years. Last month's episode was on the continuing story of Bungalow Bill, which means that today we will be listening to the George Harrison masterpiece, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. That in itself is exciting enough, but what's more, I won't be doing this alone this time. I will have a very special guest, a highly esteemed guest with me on today's episode. Abby, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Hi, I'm Abby. Oh my god, I said the thing. I'm Abigail Devoe. I run a series called Vinyl Monday on YouTube. Yes, we are collecting all of the vinyl weekdays like our Infinity Stones. I do that on YouTube. I also post little baby Vinyl Mondays to Instagram and TikTok. I'm a semi-regular contributor to trackingangle.com. I have my own website where I post reviews as well. I'm not a music critic, but I'm definitely a music fan.
So today we're going to talk about the background to the song, and then Abby and I are going to fangirl about why we love this song, and then there will be a little epilogue, and I'll say goodbye, and you'll go about your day or go to bed or whatever it is that you do after watching these episodes. Before we get stuck in though, as many of you know, for each of these episodes, I make an accompanying lino-cut printed postcard, a limited run, and this is this month's postcard. It reads, "With every mistake we must surely be learning," and it's got a little picture of George Harrison and his Les Paul Lucy, which was gifted to him by Eric Clapton, and he's crying a little tear. So if you would like for me to send you one of these postcards with a little handwritten note, there will be a link in the description that will explain to you where you can do that. Otherwise, let's begin. Right, it's September of 1968. In the studio, we have John, Paul, George, Ringo, and Eric Clapton? How has this happened? Well, fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how much you like George Harrison and the sound of my voice, we're going to have to go back a ways to answer this question. I'll be as expeditious as possible. Now, I go into more detail about this in this episode of last year's track-by-track Revolver Voyage, but George Harrison is the youngest member of the Beatles. Was the youngest member of the Beatles. He, unfortunately, is deceased. He's only 9 months younger than Paul McCartney.
He was always about 9 months older than I. Even now, he's still 9 months older than me.
But from the moment that he was invited to join the band, his role as Junior Beatle was solidified. Kind of set in stone, really. He submitted his first song for consideration on 1963's With the Beatles. That track is called Don't Bother Me.
So go away, leave me alone, don't bother me.
It was another couple of years before he put forward any other songs, his second and third featuring on the album Help from 1965.
You don't realize how much I need you, like me too much and I like you.
John and Paul, of the Beatles, seemed to find a sense of purpose earlier than George Harrison did. Perhaps it was because of the age difference, perhaps it was because of the closeness between John and Paul, but they seemed to find a real sense of meaning in writing songs. Whereas for the beginning of the Beatles, at least, George Harrison seemed perfectly content to just be the lead guitarist on the songs that these two wrote. A few things shifted in George in 1965. The first is that during the filming of Help, he encountered Indian classical music for the first time. And a few months later, he was presented with an album of Ravi Shankar's music by none other than Mr. David Crosby. If you've not heard of Ravi Shankar, first, go have a listen to some of his music and come back. Secondly, remember his name because he's going to come up later in the story. He's important. The second thing is that he and John were given LSD for the first time in early 1965. And it was George's first experience with any kind of spirituality outside of his Catholic upbringing.
I think that George's experiences of expanding his mind with acid led him to looking for something that didn't need chemicals.
Given these two things, George began to reframe his entire life around this newfound sense of direction. He may have been a bit late to the party, but once he found something that drew him, it pulled hard. The Beatles had always done everything together, but following the recording of Rubber Soul, the four of them took a break for basically the first time in their career since 1962. Their entire lives had been caught up in this grueling routine of constant touring, broken up only by recording albums, like 2 a year, and occasionally films as well. It was a lot. They were very busy. But for the first 3 months of 1966, they had nowhere to be, and they each went off and engaged in their individual pursuits. In George's case, he became more deeply involved in his burgeoning love of Indian classical music. This carried through the recording of Revolver. You can hear it on tracks like Love You Too. Following the release of Revolver, George actually took a trip to India and spent some time there. And it was life-changing for him. His love of Indian music continued to be apparent through the recording of Sgt. Pepper's, especially with his offering Within You Without You.
Life flows on within and without you.
After the release of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the band was no longer performing live, so they didn't have to go and tour this new album, which meant that, again, they had some free time. So George, in August of 1967, flew to the United States to do some filming with Ravi Shankar. There he is. Interestingly, Ravi Shankar, who by this point had become George Harrison's sitar teacher, please note, he was more than George Harrison's sitar teacher. He was an extremely accomplished and well-respected sitar player. He just happened to also teach George Harrison a bit of sitar. So, back to what I was saying. Ravi Shankar, then, was unofficially the man who inducted George Harrison into this world of Indian classical music. Ironically, he was also kind of the man who booted him back out of it.
He was the one who said to me, trying to find my background or some roots. What's my roots? I mean, the first thing that meant something really that I could call a root was riding down the road on my bike and hearing Heartbreak Hotel coming out of somebody's house. That was the last time I really played sitar.
So George Harrison returned home by way of New York City, where he spent a little bit of time with Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton. And that experience, I believe, in combination with the advice that he'd received from Ravi Shankar, inspired him to resume his role as a rock star.
I thought, well, maybe I'm better off to get back into being a guitar player, songwriter, whatever I'm supposed to be.
So he comes back to the UK, beginning of 1968, and he is ready to play some rock and roll music. Now, the band did go to India in the beginning of 1968, but George didn't bring his sitar with him. The songs that he wrote in Rishikesh were on John's guitar, which he borrowed. And he reiterated his return to his rock and roll roots in several interviews in 1968, saying, and I quote, "I'm back to being a rocker now. For a bit at least. You go through so many changes and realizations, and so often you come right back to where you started." He told another interviewer, "The feel of the music in the States was heavy, and I happened to like that. And it just happened that when I got to New York, there were people there like Jimi Hendrix and all of them, and I really like what they're doing. After that, I felt, well, to go into one thing, you've got to neglect something else. For me to go into rock and roll and become a rock and roll guitarist, as I want to, I've got to neglect Indian music." But the thing is that the rock and roller who walked into EMI Studios in 1968 ready to lay down some tracks for a new Beatles album was not the same one who had proudly presented Don't Bother Me to his senior bandmates all those years ago. Since then, he had actively pursued this life-guiding interest separately to the other Beatles. He'd become a disciplined student of a music that was worlds apart from what the rest of them had been listening to. He'd gained new skills, he'd made new friends, he'd been validated by these new friends in his talents and his skills. He had taken up new spiritual practices. He had recorded the first Beatles solo album. In short, George Harrison had grown up. So when he presented a new song in mid-1968 to underwhelmed bandmates...
We were trying to do the song, and it wasn't happening. They weren't taking it serious. I don't think they were even all playing on it.
He didn't second-guess himself, and he didn't throw the song onto a pile of other discarded efforts.
I went home that night, and I just thought, well, that's a shame, because I know this song's pretty good. And then the next day, I was driving into London with Eric.
He called up his friend Eric Clapton and invited him to play on the recording. When Eric Clapton was Hesitant, because he wasn't sure how the others would feel about it, George assertively reminded Clapton,
Look, it's my song, and I'd like you to play on it.
So it's September 5th, 1968. George straps on his guitar. He looks around to his nervous new friend and his chastened old ones, and he begins recording While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Now, in the context of that history, this song begins to take on a special significance. My favorite line in the song doesn't actually appear in the final recorded version. The line is,
Editor Nancy here. I'm here because the anchor's about to completely bungle the lyric that she purports to be her very favorite in this song. The line that she's looking for is, I look from the wings at the play you are staging while my guitar gently weeps. As I'm sitting here doing nothing but aging, still my guitar gently weeps. Back to the show.
The line is a sort of self-realization, like an epiphany that George Harrison is having about his own wasted potential. These could be the most productive years of his songwriting life, and he is spending them in service to the music of other people. The line that replaces it in the final recording, the studio album version, is, with every mistake we must surely be learning, still my guitar gently weeps. And this, by contrast, feels like a resolution. He's learning from his mistakes, and he won't let his worth be undermined. He won't be frittering away the time that he could spend honoring and honing his own talents, his own skills. The song, then, in this light, becomes George Harrison's first declaration of independence from the Beatles. With a little help from a validating friend, George Harrison's eyes have been opened to his own potential and his own worth as a songwriter, as a musician, as a person who has creative skills. That kind of thing can't be put back in a box. Abby, tell us your relevant thoughts on this matter.
My relationship to this song is, it is on my favorite Beatles album, which is the White Album. Wouldn't you know, this is the White Album series. And it's my favorite Beatles song, period.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's so exciting.
Yeah, it is. And maybe like some other White Album tunes fill out like 2, 3, 4, 5, but like this is it for me.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you're here. I would have been glad either way, but this is special. Why don't we get started? Tell me about your favorite moments on While My Guitar Gently Weeps by George Harrison of the Beatles.
I don't know what you have written down in your notes, so forgive me if I'm stepping on your toes.
That's okay. Forgive me if I interject with enthusiasm and gusto.
My first favorite special thing about While My Guitar Gently Weeps is actually the title. I think it's quite significant, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, not While My Sitar Gently Weeps.
Yes.
Before White Album production, George had closed his Raga Rock chapter with making the Wonderwall soundtrack in, I believe, Bombay. George is making his grand return to his instrument with While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
The demo version is the first version that I ever heard, so my relationship with this song is of the Anthology version. One of my close friends at school found out that I loved this, like the Esher demos, basically, and for Christmas burned me a copy of her CD of the White Album. I had always thought it was this gentle, beautiful acoustic number. And when I heard the White Album version, I was shocked that it's, I would argue, one of the heavier tracks on the album. Like, there's a real weight to it.
I have notes on heavy stuff later. I totally agree with you. It's no Helter Skelter, though.
It's no Helter Skelter.
I did want to mention that Harris songs are special from the demo. We'll see it with Something on Abbey Road.
Something in the way.
And like a Beware of Darkness later down the road.
Watch out now. Take up your world.
While My Guitar Gently Weeps is the first inkling that George is a demo darling. He nails the melody and the expression from the jump, the mourning sense, I'd say, from the jump. There's one lyric that I wish he hadn't rewritten.
Ooh.
I wait from the wings of the play you are
Yes!
staging. Yes!
Yes! Why did he not leave that in? It's one of the best lines in the song.
He didn't leave it in because it's such a direct expression of how sidelined he felt.
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't a John Lennon, I feel this because this. Or a Paul McCartney, me, you, love.
Exactly. No, I made a note of that as well. It's my favorite line in the song, and it's not in the song.
George!
Georgia!
He annoys me, but I love him.
Listening back to the Anthology version, to your earlier point about things that you love about this song, it is really nice to hear George on guitar again. The title of the song is its mission statement. This is a guitar song, be it the gentle, quiet acoustic or the big, heavy Eric Clapton muscle solos. It is a guitar song.
Put an Eric counter in the corner, one mention.
That's right. George, we don't often get to hear him play acoustic. Not at this point in their career, anyway. We get to hear it with his solo career, but it's very easy to forget that he is a beautiful acoustic player, and the Anthology version has these stunning trills. It's a reminder that he can still do this and is actually pretty good at it.
That's a sign of a great guitarist, in my opinion. What they do when you unplug their instrument.
I think that the Anthology version of this foretells Here Comes the Sun. Back to you.
Could we actually pull back to the last few seconds of Bungalow Bill, if that's allowed?
Totally.
The goofy keyboard, and I think John going, "Hey," with the tape cut at just the right moment, and the piano jumps in. It's like jumping down your throat. Being the George girly in the room, I wait for that point in the record, and I just make a
Yeah, that's
just
the face.
face.
That's the face.
It's a tonal choice. The piano part itself sounds like a more chipper funeral march.
Yes. Yes, it does. I think that's a big part of what contributes to the heaviness is that it's coming out of this very buoyant Bungalow Bill chorus where everyone's whistling and clapping and singing and being silly, and then bam, we're into something way more serious.
One of my favorite sequencing choices on the whole record.
Good call. What else have you got?
Think about the human voice. How your voice sounds is part genetic, how your voice box is made up, and part environmental, the accents of the territories in which you grew up, whatever your parents' little vocal quirks were. If playing style is a guitarist's voice, which is environmental through development of skill and genetic through a musician's influences, phrasing is what the player says.
Mm-hmm.
George's short, sharp phrases say frustration, annoyance, maybe a little youthful bravado. George was the baby in the band. Maybe the kid stomping his foot.
Yeah, almost petulance.
Yes. I'd argue guitar tone is handwriting, maybe another way to communicate language. That's great on this song as well.
I love that the guitar and the bass throughout the verse, rather than like strumming and taking up space, are doing this very skeletal steps in unison.
Ba ba ba.
Yeah, and having the guitar and the bass do it in unison is a big part of the weight to the verses. Ringo's really locked in with that groove as well, so I think together they form this very weighty rhythm section. This song really marks a turning point, I think, in George's career. George post-Raga Rock is a different guitarist from George pre-Raga Rock. Early George is a fumbling, awkward player at times. He has timing issues. His phrasing actually isn't great, especially in the really early days. He seems to apply an even amount of pressure to every pick stroke. So there's no subtlety to it. He never plays quietly. It's just twang, 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 twang.
It's like being a dancer, hitting every motion with the same emphasis.
Exactly.
There needs to be a bit more contrast.
No nuance.
George had absolutely developed contrast at this point in his career.
And you remember that in about 12 months, he'll be playing something. Like the solo on Something is genuinely stunning guitar work. just incredible guitar work. And so the subtlety that you're describing, I think, is part of George's commitment, especially having spent time with, what's his face? Eric Clapton.
Number 2!
Yeah, he's just like, you know what, I think I can do this pretty well. I think that I can be more than just a perfunctory guitarist. It's interesting that you're hearing that on this track, because I do think this is the point where he really commits to being a good guitarist. That's not to say he was phoning it in before. I think he just has more experience and maturity. And maybe the dedication that he had to learning sitar with a teacher was part of what taught him the kind of focused discipline that he would need to become a better guitarist.
Can we talk about the entrance of the organ on the... There's no real conventional chorus in While My Guitar Gently Weeps. You probably have something more articulate to say about the structure of the lyric itself.
Oh yeah, it's sort of like a bridge.
Bits through that, I don't know why, when the organ kind of goes bleep, bleep, you know? The organ provides the mournful sound that was lost along the way from the demo.
Yes, funereal.
That got lost as Georgia, hi, buddy. Oh my God.
He's like, it's time for me to be in this episode.
The littlest correspondent.
The littlest, the yellowest. Sorry.
It's okay.
Going back to George Harrison.
I think that tenderness got lost along the way as George and company beefed up the arrangement.
Again, there's the heaviness in the transition. Having learned that it's gone from harmonium to harmonium to an organ.
Not the murder mittens!
Yeah, I think that there's obviously a weightiness about an organ that the harmonium doesn't have. There's a depth and a bassiness.
Hey kids, Editor Nancy here. Just a little bit of context. What she's referring to is that in the demo version of this song, George is playing a harmonium. By the time they get to the full version of the studio version of the album, there is now an organ on the recording.
I don't know how you were diverting.
Great, now we're all caught up. Back to the show.
It is a churchy and funereal instrument. So in a way, it's sort of like sounding the death knell, or the beginning death knell of the Beatles. This is, you know, as the anchor is arguing, the point where George individuates from the group and is like, actually, I'm more than just a Beatle. So yeah, I think there is like a prophetic funereal presence in this song.
Speaking about that B-verse, chorus, whatever you want to call it, I love George's double tracking there. He had a much more nasally, delicate voice than Thing 1 or Thing 2, who are both like hooting and hollering all over every track, as you pointed out in some of your lovely compilation videos.
Thank you kindly.
It was great for singing the middle part of the 3-part harmonies. George is very often stuck in the middle. Hearing it on the melody is a treat.
He is the band's blender vocally. He's got the heights of Paul McCartney's voice, so that matches nicely. And he's got, I don't know if nasality is a word, but he's got the nasal quality of John's voice, and I think that is how he brings the two voices together in a way that makes them sound like a discrete, adhered unit, as opposed to 3 different voices. So it's really neat to get to hear what he can do in his own terms, especially at this point where he's clearly not trying to emulate anyone else's style. This is just what he sounds like. This is distilled George. George's vocal tone is antithetical to the heaviness of the instrumental. There's like I'm not going to say frail, vulnerable whispery quality to it. And I think that matches the themes of the song really nicely. It has very much like this is what's happening outside, and this is what's happening inside. It's like within you, without you, revisited.
I just had a galaxy brain moment when you said that.
You're welcome. I think you can really hear that in the music, where the heaviness of the instrumental is the you all. I look at you all, see the love there that's sleeping. And then While My Guitar Gently Weeps is George, the observer. So George singing with his soft voice is separate to everything that's happening without the other Beatles, the rest of the world. It's me versus them. And I think that's reflected in the vocal performance, the delivery. I love the bass line at the bridge of this song. Sorry,
I
was
knew
looking
you were
at my
going to
notes.
say something about the bass line. I was waiting.
The bass line at the bridge of the song is beautiful. I especially like that it diverges from what the guitar is doing and then they come back together, they reunite, and those moments are great.
The line for every mistake we must surely be learning, that's Paul.
Yes, Paul sings harmony on this one.
Yeah, having him sing that line specifically is so sickly ironic. George had to know what he was doing with that.
Absolutely.
It's like Stevie Nicks making Lindsey Buckingham sing on songs about him.
I really love the way that the turnaround there goes major, a really stark contrast that works beautifully. It's very sparkly, almost.
Thank you for bringing your musical knowledge to this. I'm just saying words.
Sparkles!
And then, clearly, Eric's solo. Counter 3. His phrasing is something else. Can I swear on this channel?
Go for it.
He spoke a fluent language. Notes just tumbled out of that man. Not so much now. Not so much now. He's kind of really gone for the slow hand nickname. But at this stage, just such an articulate player. Eric was coming out of Cream at this time. That last studio Cream album, Wheels of Fire, more muscly tunes like Politician. Eric's presence on While My Guitar Gently Weeps, in playing in this macho style, this time I think on a 57 Les Paul, another real rocking guitar. That's George slamming his on the table. This is a Hera song, and I get to choose the players.
100%.
Eric expresses what George just couldn't with his playing. They speak in entirely different languages on their same respective instrument. What can Eric express? The high you feel after storming out of the place.
Yeah, definitely.
My very last point is George's, like, moaning. I don't know what that is, but it was one hell of a choice, and I wouldn't have the song without it. It kind of connects with the sexual subtext of the song to follow.
Yes. Interesting pick.
Another smart sequencing decision.
No, it's a big swing. He does something weird at the end of Long, Long, Long. As well. But he hasn't really done something like this before. He's drawing on new clothes.
Yeah.
Word painting. He's weeping. And he's also matching the wobbly tone of the guitar. So they're a counterpoint against the guitar. It's almost like a call and response. But it's also a counterpoint against whatever Paul's doing, because he's doing a lot of like high... I think he's making like a ooh sort of a noise up top. So we've got low George, high Paul. And then Paul, of course, comes in with a yeah, right at the fade out. I really love that coming from George. Again, it's this boldness that we don't usually see with his music. Even though George made the complaint that his songs really weren't getting a look in by comparison against Paul and John's, I would like to shout out Paul because he never phones it in the performance. Even if it's not one of his songs and he's like, this isn't as good as my song, he is still singing his guts out on this one. You know, he's still performing as well as he can. That deserves a mention because I think George Harrison can be a bit of a petty, spiteful man sometimes.
Yeah.
And can definitely overstate injustices against him, perceived injustices as grievances.
He did not always practice what he preached. I look at his actions sometimes and I go, that's not very Hare Krishna of you, George.
On so many fronts.
There's nothing mystical about it, only that you're ignorant of what that entails.
I like Paul adding the yeah to this. It slips a little blues connection into While My Guitar Gently Weeps ever so slightly.
And also, I don't know if George would have been able to pull that off. Paul's voice has the pardon the expression, but the balls to really go for that high scream. Yeah, maybe George could do it, but it's more in Paul's wheelhouse.
If he did, I feel like he would have put his voice in, like, the Dark Horse Dire Straits.
Actually, yeah, you're right. He did try that, and it went badly.
It didn't work.
Did you have any other thoughts?
That was the end of my list.
Those are my last points. So, Abby, thank you so much for your time. Where can people on the internet find you and what you do?
Thank you for having me. I love
Anytime.
being a repeat
Anytime.
offender on this channel. You can find me mostly, probably the easiest, through the YouTube thing at youtube.com/Abigail Devoe. You can also find me on Instagram as @Abigail Devoe, or TikTok if that's what you kiddies at home do, @Abigail Devoe. My website, abigaildevoe.com, wouldn't you know it, that's where I post the written versions of my reviews. I'm also an occasional contributor to trackingangle.com, and so much, I'm so sorry, I co-host a podcast with Emma Rosa Caterina called Unveiling the Legends, Dolls of the 60s and 70s, aka the Dolls Podcast.
I highly recommend checking out basically everything that Abby does, because you're a consummate professional and your work is of an incredibly high caliber.
Me, a professional?
Yeah. Well, you certainly appear that way.
If I'm a professional, I'm worried.
I mean, we're all making it up, but you look like you know what you're doing. So, again, thank you very much for your time. We'll see you in whatever the next Trifecta-verse video is.
Yeah.
Following the recording of the White Album, George Harrison went to visit Bob Dylan and the band and was struck by the very collaborative, cooperative style of songwriting that the band all had. While we'll never know exactly what happened during the time that he spent in Woodstock, New York, I think it's probably fair to conclude that his time with those other musicians further consolidated the realizations that he was having spending time with Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton earlier in the year. That he was a musician who could write music that was of a caliber comparable to those of his bandmates, and that the music he was writing was deserving of time and attention. Within weeks of that trip to Woodstock, New York, George Harrison would quit the Beatles.
Leaving the band now.
When?
Now.
He was coaxed back by the others, but for the remainder of his time in the band, he had one foot out the door. And to me, While My Guitar Gently Weeps is the moment when he takes that first step. And that's it for me. If you enjoyed this episode or you would like to support any of the weird things I do, I'll leave a link in the description to my Buy Me a Coffee page, where you are most welcome to make a donation if you wish, but no pressure, my friends. Thank you so much to everybody who has made a donation or signed up as a member. I appreciate you immensely. If you're curious about what any of my original music sounds like, I'll leave a link in the description to that as well. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you here next week.
Have a great weekend!
The lyric that she's after is, I look from the wings at the... now I've got to check, I'm not sure either.